These days, people are more than used to airplanes. Traveling by air can significantly save time. Thousands of planes can be in the air at the same time. The staff does everything to make passengers feel comfortable, but airline employees will never tell you some secrets. Even if you have to fly planes every week, you will still be incredibly surprised by the facts that you are about to hear. In this video, we are going to reveal all the secrets that airlines hide from passengers. If the flight is the time of a comfortable rest for passengers, the staff is at their workplace. Nevertheless, during long flights, they also want to relax. Therefore, each plane has a special room where a crew member can take a nap. Of course, no passenger has ever been shown these apartments, and most likely, you did not even think about their existence. You may have noticed lights in the front of the airplane, but you hardly know what they mean. In fact, these are light indicators, which are used by the pilot to inform that he wants to talk to someone from the crew. He dials a special code and a signal lights up. It shows a specific person that they need to visit the cockpit. Smoking on the plane is prohibited for obvious reasons, but in the 90s of the last century, people smoked everywhere, even during flight. Ashtrays can still be seen in the restroom of the plane, although a sign banning smoking can also be seen directly above them. So why haven't the ashtrays been removed yet? It turns out that having an ashtray in bathrooms is a legal requirement for airlines. The thing is that, despite the ban, some smokers cannot resist smoking a cigarette. In the absence of ashtrays, they would throw cigarette butts into the trash, and this could provoke a fire. You may have noticed a small black triangle at the windows of the plane, and even if you've seen it, you don't know exactly what it means. In fact, this sign shows the crew where the best view of the wings of the aircraft opens. This is especially important in an emergency situation. And what if some psycho opens the door of the plane during the flight? Then the pressure inside will drop sharply, oxygen masks will drop in front of the passengers, and those who ignored the flight attendant's request to fasten seatbelts will instantly be taken away. But don't be scared or alarmed, this can only be discussed hypothetically. In practice, it's simply impossible to open the door during a flight because the internal pressure is much higher than the external atmospheric pressure. As a rule, the menu that is offered to passengers of the aircraft is quite diverse. Everyone can choose the food to their taste, but some passengers have to choose not from the entire menu, but from the leftovers, since usually flight attendants are the first to choose their food. No matter how they monitor the quality of products, no one is immune from food poisoning anyway. That's why pilots get different meals. If one of the pilots becomes ill, the second will take over the control of the aircraft. If they had similar poisonous food, there would be no pilot to control the plane. Of course, after each flight, the cabin is cleaned, but this is a very superficial cleaning. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, surfaces have been treated more thoroughly, but studies have shown that folding tables are still the dirtiest place. Therefore, if you are responsible for your health, do not forget to take a disinfectant with you on the flight and treat the surface with it before you start eating. When the plane is at an altitude of fewer than 3 kilometers, it requires the greatest concentration of attention from the pilot. Therefore, this is not the time to have small talk. At this point, pilots can only communicate with dispatchers, and only when the plane is at an altitude of more than 3 kilometers, the pilots can communicate with each other and with the flight attendant. Flight attendants instruct each time so that in case of an emergency, passengers know what to do to save lives. A life jacket is simply necessary during an emergency landing on the water, but in everyday life, it's absolutely useless. Nevertheless, some passengers steal vests and, for some reason, take them for themselves. Perhaps they just want to have something to remember the journey.
Low to increase air, push fins inward to release air. Lights will automatically illuminate.
Before takeoff, passengers are always asked to put their phones into flight mode or turn them off if there is no such function. This rule must be followed because signals can interfere with aircraft navigation systems. But you'll probably be surprised to learn that pilots and flight attendants themselves often do not turn off their smartphones. Sometimes they just forget, and sometimes they ignore the rule simply because they understand that their smartphone alone will not lead to a plane crash. Nevertheless, it is better for passengers not to tempt fate, not to annoy the stewardess, but to switch the phone to flight mode. The crew of the aircraft almost never drinks pure water. They prefer tea or coffee, and for a reason. The fact is that they know perfectly well that water pipes are cleaned only twice a year, so the water in the plane is not of the best quality, and it's better to boil it. Each of us entering the toilet closes the door. However, in an airplane, this action is rather symbolic. The thing is that the restroom door can easily be opened both from the inside and from the outside. This means that anyone can break into the toilet if they want to. The lock only makes it clear to others that there is someone in the toilet, but if an emergency situation arises, the flight attendant will easily open the door. It is often necessary to transport the body of a deceased person to another country. Quite often, corpses are located in the luggage compartment of an ordinary passenger plane, but of course, no one will tell you about it. Today, airplanes are considered the safest form of transport, and yet those passengers who are afraid to fly want to take the safest seat on the plane. Many people mistakenly believe that it is safest to sit behind the cockpit, but in fact, according to statistics, those passengers who are sitting in the tail of the plane are much more likely to survive a plane crash. If during the flight you are informed that the pilot has fallen asleep, then you will most likely have a panic attack. Therefore, no one will tell you about it. But in fact, a survey conducted by the pilot union showed that more than half of pilots sleep during the flight. What is most shocking is not this, but the fact that some of them admitted that there were cases when they found the co-pilot asleep at the moment of awakening. Of course, autopilots are capable of a lot now, but this information is a little scary. Some passengers think that the flight attendants know at least a little about how to fly an airplane and, in case of emergency, they will be able to replace the pilot, but this is not the case at all. Flight attendants have completely different tasks. They are only responsible for working with passengers. Therefore, it is not worth counting on the fact that the stewardess can take the helm and correct the situation in case of anything. You may have noticed antennas on the wings of an airplane. Their main task is to ensure the pilot's communication with the ground. They are capable of generating static electricity and sometimes even prevent lightning strikes. Have you ever wondered why airplanes always have rounded windows? You may be interested to know that there were many planes with squared windows, but there were cases when the glass broke right during the flight. That's because the corners are less durable. That's why now all planes have rounded windows. Many are surprised that a huge plane is able to land using only a few small wheels. It's all about heavy-duty tires that can withstand a huge load. If a car tire can be damaged by simply running over something sharp, then aircraft tires withstand enormous pressure and remain intact. Children often ask about the footprints in the sky. Not every adult can answer this question correctly. Some fans of conspiracy theories believe that these traces are left by chemicals that are sprayed over us by a secret government for some reason, but in fact, everything is much simpler. This is condensate, which is formed when hot exhaust gases collide with cold air. Almost everyone knows that there is a black box on board every aircraft, which is also called a flight recorder. But interestingly, the black box is actually red. It is called black because the first recorders were really black. However, it turned out that this color was useless because in the event of a plane crash, the device was difficult to find. Therefore, the color was changed, but the name remained. Of course, the security system does not allow anyone to bring weapons into the plane, but you may be surprised that almost every cockpit has weapons. Of course, we're not talking about a machine gun, but there is an axe in the pocket behind the captain's chair. It's needed in case of disaster. With an axe, you can cut an exit hole or open a door that can jam at any moment.